Okay, all right. Everybody quiet down, please. We're about to get started. So here's how this is going to go tonight. So this meeting is designated as a select board workshop meeting. It's a form of meeting that we can hold. The intention here tonight is for the board to discuss the emergency lanes, right? The topic has come up at a couple of meetings in relationship to a couple of situations that needed immediate attention. However, the board has not had a chance to kind of have more of a deeper conversation about, you know, the situation, what's going on here, and what the preference of some of the board members are. So that's the purpose of this meeting. There aren't going to be any major decisions that come out of this meeting. I expect that it's going to be the first of multiple discussions on the topic, okay? So we also have a couple of business items that we have to take care of before we get to that point. So the way this is going to go is we're going to do some normal business first, right? And then we're going to have a discussion amongst the board members about the emergency lanes. And then after that discussion, we're going to open it up for public comment, all right? Now, I'm hoping that, so here's the deal. This isn't Facebook, okay? So let's all try to be extremely respectful and polite tonight, and let's have a really good discussion and dialogue, okay? So we're going to start this meeting as we do every meeting with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah. I'm going to ask each member that's up here to introduce themselves. We'll start on this end, please.
Ben Bartlett.
Tony Dumas.
Tyler Eaton.
Charlene Anderson.
Donna Danis.
Chris Sterndale, Town Administrator.
And running
Dawn
back and
Pally
forth.
is our,
Yeah.
administrative assistant.
Okay. All right, so we're going to start now. Do we have manifests to approve tonight?
We do.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the accounts payable manifest and the payroll manifest, both dated 31 December 2018.
Second.
All in favor? Minutes? We'll ask. If we can be done with them, let's be done with them. Okay. Yeah. Okay, have you guys had a chance to read the minutes? Are we prepared to vote on them, or do you guys need more time?
I've read them.
You read them?
Yeah.
Ben, you all set? Okay. I'll take a motion.
Make a motion that we accept the minutes for the December 17th, 2000. I make a motion we accept the minutes of the December 17th, 2018 meeting as written.
Second.
All in favor? Okay.
I abstain.
Sorry. Okie dokie. We'll move on now to reports from assigned boards and committees. Do we have anything from budget or planning?
I was not there at this one. All they did was review the school budget.
Okay. Planning?
planning hasn't met since our last meeting.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on to town administrator report.
Nothing you haven't heard already.
Okay. All right, so now we'll move down to general business, the encumbrances. Want to lead us through that?
Okay, three things that you all discussed at your last meeting. We've got finalized contracts ready to go to use 2018 money for work that will actually take place after the new year. And we had touched on all of them at the last meeting, and now that we have finalized contracts, we can encumber that money if you so choose. That's fence work for the new North Cemetery, the water system for the library, and engineering for Ledge Farm Road, which will appear again on the warrant at town meeting, I think. So those all came in with the numbers that we had last time. You have a motion. Do with it what you wish.
And Chris, we got quotes for the engineering work for our ledge fund that you provided to us.
Yes, we have a contract ready to go based on those quotes.
Okay. Comments or discussion on that, you guys? Okay. So, yeah, we'll take a motion on that.
I'll make a motion that the select board hereby encumbrances the following 2018 funds for contracted work from the 2018 road construction article.
Let's be nice, let's be nice.
I make a motion that the select board hereby encumbrances the following 2018 funds for contracted work from the 2018 road construction article, $77,750 for advanced paving and CMA engineers, and from the proposed 2018 operating budget, $39,858 for CMA engineers, Brentwood Fence, and Dunn Plumbing and Heating.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, that covers all of our general business, right?
Two more things.
Okay.
The cell tower on town-owned property on Route 4. We have discussed a number of things around that in non-public. This way I think we can do in public. This is a 6-month extension of the existing lease.
Yep.
That will allow us to retain some outside help for negotiating a longer-term lease on that tower. Pricing stays the same as where we are right now. Just gets us 6 months to finish that up. And you have a motion on that as well.
I'd like to make a motion that the select board authorize the town administrator to enter into a 6-month lease extension with SBA Towers LLC for the cell tower on town-owned property.
Second.
All in favor?
And last is a new contract for solid waste hauling and disposal, which you also have. We got some quotes on that. Best deal is to stick where we are with waste management.
Yep.
We've got 2 different time windows we can select from. The longer we go, the smaller the annual increases are, and I think we're going to end up with them for the foreseeable future anyway. So I suggested that we lock in the next 5 years with waste management.
Do you need a motion on that, Chris?
No, I just need your general consent, and then I'll ask you to sign the contract itself. So if you have no questions or concerns, I'll just pass that down and you can move on.
Does anybody have any questions on the board? Nope, okay.
That's all I have. That's all I got.
Do you want us to sign
Yep,
that
I'll
now?
send that down. I'm just gonna date it for you.
Just signing in one spot?
Yep.
Just all under the,
Yep.
okay.
Oops. Figured I had to need a comb over.
Okay, now we're going to enter the workshop portion of the meeting. So I know everybody here is chomping at the bit to get up and to, make comments and question the board, or possibly even yell at the board. But we're going to start with a discussion amongst the board members ourselves, okay? And this is very common for a workshop type of format meeting. So just to kind of do some level setting, I will kind of recap my understanding of how we got to this point, and I'll ask Chris to chime in as well. So everybody knows that private roads and emergency lanes has been a topic in this town, I don't know, for as long as I've been here, and that's almost 30 years. And it's come up at a couple of points, 1995 and then 2011 again, I think, where a number of the roads were declared emergency lanes. So we've operated that way, and the town has plowed and maintained, to a certain extent, the emergency lanes. And this was in accordance with a policy that was set or validated by the board in 2011. So we've reached a point here, so there's, it's been done, but we've reached a point here where members of this board have expressed concern about the legality of doing that, and the fact that the definition or the designating some of the roads at that time as emergency lanes was a fairly loose interpretation of the law that was available to us. There is concern about the legal risk and continuing to do that. And I'll invite any of the board members to correct me if I'm wrong, but this isn't a budget issue. This is, from the perspective of most of the members of the board, a legal issue. So we also understand, though, that, there's the perspective of the folks who have lived on the roads and have had the roads maintained for so many years. And a sentiment that for the town to stop doing so is taking away a service that taxpayers are entitled to. So it's certainly as somebody described it to me, a thorny issue, and one that needs careful consideration, and this board is committed to careful consideration of this topic. And so that's kind of where we are. Chris, is there anything you want to add to that before we start? Okay. All right, so in terms of setting context, anything else from any of the other board members that you want to mention? Okay, I will open it up for discussion then amongst the board members.
So do you, we've put down kind of some different options. Do you want to take those options one by one and discuss them as a board? Would that be the best way to, there's a couple of different ways we can go, and do we want to take each one that has been kind of laid out?
Yeah, so let me read through those first.
Yeah.
All right, and you guys can jump in if I don't cover them adequately. But there are a couple options available to this board. There's a number of options available to this board. One is that we can continue to maintain and plow the roads status quo, as it's been defined since formally since August 2011. Under that policy, we continue as is. There are still concerns about the legal risk, but that's certainly one of our options. Another option is to continue to maintain and plow only those emergency lanes that meet, a defined standard. And some of the concern there is that some of the roads are in a condition that does actually make it quite difficult for the town to maintain because of width or obstructions or whatever. Another option, which certainly isn't an option that I think any member of the board wholeheartedly supports, is that we immediately stop and say, okay, we're done. Or
Just a point of clarification, we can't immediately stop in accordance to the policy. What we can do is make a decision, and then we need to require a 6-month notification
Yep.
to all those affected. So there is
Yep.
no such thing as an immediate stop. It's just a decision that's made and notification provided.
So it's at a future point,
Yeah.
at some future point. There is a process by which roads could be brought up to a certain defined standard and then request to be accepted by the town. And I think maybe you can explain that a little bit better than I do, but essentially, for lack of a better term, it's considered a betterment assessment, which means people who live on the roads have to bring them up to a certain standard, and then the town votes to accept them or not as town roads. You also need to understand that, again, I'm relying on Chris to correct me if I'm wrong here, but this board does not have the power to accept or not accept roads. It's town meeting that has the power to accept or not accept town roads. And then there is also another option that would be people on private roads in a certain area can form a village district. And village districts can be formed for a specific purpose. And so that would be an option if, say, we said, okay, at this point in time, the town is no longer going to maintain roads or plow roads, but would assist, in the development of village districts. And so village district is essentially saying, okay, you form a village district for a specific purpose. It has a governing body just like the town does, and it's for that specific purpose. And I think the town would be involved in kind of collecting the fees that would be associated with that. Did I miss any options? I'm not saying that the board is leaning toward any one of those options right now. I'm not saying that, we're leaning any particular way. All I'm doing in fairness and transparency is trying to lay out to everyone what the options are.
I think the other option too, which just is within the policy and is within the law of an emergency lane classification, is that there be a review, kind of an annual review of emergency lanes to maintain, to assure that they're meeting the standards and the policy requirements of a classification of an emergency lane. I think the other option that we have is to look at the law and what the law requires and how the law is defined in regards to what is and is not an emergency lane.
Okay, so everybody's covered with that's kind of like the options that are laid before us. Okay. So, do you want to take them one by one?
I think that'd be the easiest way.
Okay. All right. So, let's start with the first one was continuing to maintain and plow emergency lanes. Status quo under the current policy as verified in 2011. Comments?
Well, for starters, I think if we continue status quo, there'd still have to be some adjustments to be made. For example, the existing policy, the existing town policy is not being followed as it was written. So we would have to start, at the very least, following our own rule, not only in terms of creating or de-designate an emergency lane, but also in reviewing and, you know, assessing them periodically, as well as, you know, enforcing, you know, the obligations that do legally fall to the landowners of the private roads, to make sure that they're, you know, they're holding up their side of the commitment.
So Tony, what, under the policy, which aspects of it do you feel that we aren't following?
Well, you know, for example, on the third page of the policy, it says rescinding emergency lane declarations. The Board of Selectmen has the authority to rescind an emergency lane declaration at any time. However, this will generally result either from the abutter's failure to maintain the condition of the road according to the criteria enumerated in road conditions 2 and 3, or when the selectmen determine that the public benefit considerations no longer apply. So it is written in the policy that there is an expectation of the landowner to perform their own maintenance, right? An emergency lane designation doesn't automatically become a free road maintenance by the town designation. Okay, there are still obligations to be met by that private landowner, right? It just doesn't default to the town. But status quo, the way we've been doing it, if I had a 100-acre chunk of land, I could put it out for development, have a neighborhood built in there, make a private road, and then sit back, wipe my hands clean, and say the town's going to take care of it.
I think that would have a hard time passing in these
Well,
days.
you know, it's
That
but
wouldn't
that's-
pass. That's a little extreme,
You
I
know,
think.
that's in effect that's what has happened over time.
Yeah.
Not in recent history, Tony.
I think the other thing is, I mean, if you look at this policy, you can poke holes all the way through it. I mean,
Can I just respond to one of them
Yep.
before you bring up
Yep.
new ones? So the one thing, Tony, you referenced the landowners, and as we know, because a lot of these roads were developed a long time ago, right, or laid out a long time ago, it's very difficult to determine who the landowners are.
in some
Right.
cases, there's real clear.
Sure, yeah, agreed. In other cases, though, in deeds, it specifically says that the residents are given right-of-way, but that the owner bears no responsibility for maintenance or upkeep. And so what that does, and no provisions for providing a vehicle or a mechanism for homeowners on the roads themselves to form an alliance to do that. So I think, well, the idea of saying the owners are going to do it is ideal, right? There's two problems with that. One is, in many cases, we can't three problems. In many cases, you know, we can't identify the owner, or the owner has covered themselves against being responsible for it, or the owner is identified and they've said, I'm not doing it, because it's been so long that the town has been doing it, that the town should continue to do it.
Can I back us up for a minute? Because can I back us up to how the RSA defines emergency lanes?
Yeah, go ahead.
And what that means within the emergency lane class, the RSA? And it says nothing about, in fact, the New Hampshire Municipal Association is very clear that the emergency lane classification just gives the town the right to go in without the landowner's permission and clear a fallen tree or replace a culvert. In the New Hampshire Municipal Association, it's clear it's not for ongoing maintenance. So I think
Well,
that we need to be clear with that, because even if you read this policy, it says nothing about ongoing maintenance of the road.
It doesn't, it does say plowing and other. There's an other right in there that makes it, you know, a little open, right?
I'll read it right out of the book if you want. It's pretty clear.
I've got it right here if you want it. Want it? Do you want
Sure.
it?
Yeah, go ahead.
The-
I'm sorry, we're not taking public comment yet. Okay, this is just for the board right now. We'll allow plenty of time for public comment and questions.
Two key provisions from the law. One is Such repair may include removal of brush, repair of washouts or culverts, or any other work deemed necessary to render such way passable by firefighting equipment and rescue or other emergency vehicles. And the guidance you've got from council is that you can pretty much define what that work is, what work is deemed necessary. Defining that level of work falls to the board. Do you want to talk about the other legal piece of? The underlying legal concern is also in the law, which says that the public need for keeping such lane passable by emergency vehicles is supported by an identified public welfare or safety interest which surpasses or differs from any private benefits to landowners abutting such lane, which means that in layman's terms, the general public has to benefit from this designation of an emergency lane over and above the benefits received by anybody who has property on that emergency lane.
So the law is pretty clear. I mean, the statement there is pretty clear on that. However, the counter argument from many of the folks in the room here is that, the public benefit is, they're the public, they're receiving benefit, and paying taxes, and and it's been done all along. So.
But I think, Chris, if you can share some of what examples are of that public benefit, it's like to a switching station or to some kind of, it's something that is not just.
Yeah, that's as far as we can find, that's untested in court. So all we can look to is the words in the law, and we also can learn a little bit from what other towns are doing. The general common interpretation is that public benefit is something like public infrastructure, a substation or a sewer pump house or something like that, or also we've seen examples of say small pieces of road that make plowing easier because of plow routes, or there's some clearly identifiable benefit to the town generally. Those are the kinds of examples that we've seen.
Yeah, so not necessarily just a substation, but power lines that if they went down would bring down another part of the town, right?
That's a decision that you can make. You can define it that way if you wish.
Okay.
I haven't found that example, but
okay. So one of the arguments to that people use a lot is access to the lake for emergencies on the lake. Needing to get out for drowning or fires or something like that. So and I know that's kind of, there's mixed opinions on whether or not that's a legitimate point.
There's mixed. Yeah.
Do you want me to point
Yeah,
out?
keep going, yeah.
Do you guys want to still go over the policy? Kind of the existing policy? My thoughts on some of it?
Yeah.
All right. So just a couple of things. So I think within the policy, there's those three top general requirements, which it isn't clear in how the policy is written if all three of those must be met, or if just one or two. So I think that needs to be revised. It also kind of alludes to, if you look at number 3, which talks about a private way.
Sorry, I think for the benefit of people, if we're going to refer to 1, 2, or 3, we should say what they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you look at a private way with 2 or more owners or abutters or residents under the separate ownership, you could look at some shared driveways in the town. You could look at some of the condominium associations or condominium complexes that are in the town, and those could actually be declared emergency lanes. So I think that I think while this was a good an attempt, I think it's unclear, and I think it has a lot of loopholes. I think the other thing too is under public welfare or safety requirements, it says providing access to possible forest fire areas as determined by the chief of Nottingham Fire Department. Has anybody seen a list? I haven't seen a list. And we have a lot of forest around us.
So I'm sorry, are you saying that would be something that we would want to ask the chief for?
Well, what I'm trying to do is point out how many holes there are in this policy, okay? And that we should look at this policy.
Well, I mean, I think the underlying statement about that is, you know, there's the whole state park, right?
There's all of Mulligan Forest. I mean, there's forests all around us.
Fair enough, but I mean, how many private roads or emergency lanes are there up near Mulligan?
But that's my point. If I have a share, if I'm an owner with a shared driveway, so it meets the criteria that there's two separate owners, and it abuts a large forest, could I not come before this board and say, my driveway should be an emergency lane?
Sure, I mean, that's fair enough, and if we have clearly defined criteria, then we would have the
Right.
reasons to say no, right?
And so then that brings me down to the road condition requirements. Number one, minimum widths of 16 feet should exist. There are a lot of roads that are classified as emergency lanes that aren't 16 feet. So I think at a minimum, this policy needs to be cleaned up and revised and
Clarified.
and much clearer than what it is now.
Clarified.
And I could go on,
Yep.
there's others, but
Do you guys, Tony, Ben, any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, during previous discussions that we've had, I've said that we need to come up with more, better defined criteria, right, for how we, you know, what we would consider as, you know, acceptable conditions to declare an emergency lane. And that could absolutely be worked into a revised policy. You know, that's gonna take some work. But like Charlene said, as it is written, it's really vague and it does have holes in it. So that's something we're gonna have to nail that down.
I'd like to add, though, go back to the power lines. I mean, everybody's seen what has happened in California. That was due to a power line coming down, and not myself being a lineman. I mean, for not to be able to get at something, and when the wires do come down, I mean, they raise havoc, and especially in the summertime, I mean, and winter. I mean, we could lose a lot of our forest in one simple.
and you could say the same thing with a shared driveway. You could say the same thing with a private owner that lives off. There's folks that live a mile back off the road.
Oh, yeah. All right.
So I mean, I think that's why this is just riddled with holes.
Well, I think riddled with holes is a little harsh, maybe. I mean, I think
I think it needs a lot. It could
It needs
benefit
some-
from a lot of work.
I think that the boards at the time came up with the best policy, you know, the policy that they thought was right, working with legal counsel at the time as well. And, you know, the legal counsel that they had at the time did approve, you know, the language of the policy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe it needs to be revisited, but, you know, I think at the time it was done, it was with good intention. Okay. All right, so that was option number one, which was, you know, continue as is, which Charlene and Tony and you guys, I think what you're suggesting is if we were to do that, it would require a review of the policy.
If we want to put this, if we want to tighten this up and really address this, it needs more.
Okay. I, for one, would like to see this put to bed. Okay, so I think that the second option that we talked about was continuing to maintain and plow only those emergency lanes that meet a defined standard. I think that's kind of addressed by the same comments, right? Because under that option, we would be defining a standard,
Right.
which would be expressed through, you know, a tightened up policy.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at this policy right now and we were to review the emergency lanes that exist, there would be a lot that would come off because they're not even meeting the requirements of the policy.
Well, I haven't looked at it lane by lane, so,
Well, I haven't looked at it lane by lane, but
yeah.
there's quite a few that come to mind.
I'd be careful making a statement like that before looking at the lanes, at the individual lanes, but.
I'm just saying the ones that come to mind.
Yeah. So, stopping all plowing and maintenance at, with 6-month notice, again, is another option. That's basically saying, okay, effective X date, the town is no longer going to do this, and it's up to people who live on the road to organize themselves and figure out how to get it done in the future.
You're following these options.
Well, I'm actually following the original document that I did,
Oh.
which was basically the same. So, any thoughts or comments on that? Is there any, go ahead.
That isn't an option, in my mind.
What was the option?
Just stopping with
Immediately stop.
defined notice.
No, well, I think I think we all agree
There's a
with
mic.
that. I think we all agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Tyler. It's that by itself is not an option. There's going to be no one-size-fits-all solution for this. I think there are emergency lanes out there that need to stay as emergency lanes. There are probably some roads that just need to be accepted. There are others that need to be de-designated, once properly reviewed with some properly defined criteria.
So that's interesting what you just said, Tony, because what you just said is that there's some that, need to be, brought up to some standard, or some that need to be accepted, right? And there is that process for roads to be accepted by the town. As I said before, that goes through town meeting, right? Again, that would involve the board defining clear standards for that, what that would take. Because I think that would be a really hard thing to get past town meeting. So you would have to have some pretty clear standards
Yeah.
defined with that.
That's the only remedy for the vagueness that has got us in this situation, is clearly defined standards. Binary conditions, either it qualifies or it doesn't. And we need to come up with that.
Okay. So the other thing, I think everybody's already said they agree that, we don't want to stop, at some point, cold turkey. But, so I think the idea of, the village district is probably not something that needs to be explored much further. Do you guys agree with that?
I wouldn't toss it out, but I think if we're going to look at that, we need to really look at that really closely, and because we need to look at, do we do that across the board for all private roads? Do we do that for Class 6 roads? I mean, how do we do that, right?
Yep.
And I think that, and then the way that I read the language, it's almost the people put that forward,
Exactly.
not the town. I mean, we can still, we can do workshops on it and help it, but I think that there's a lot that we need to define. The other thing that I don't know, and the question that I would have is, if we were to do that, how does that impact, a developer comes in, does a subdivision, they're responsible for that road until the town accepts that road at town meeting.
That's how it is now.
Right.
Yep.
So now and what happens is the residents petition to get a road accepted. That road is then reviewed by the planning board and by the highway department to make sure it meets the standards. And then it's voted by the people. If we were to do the village district, and again, not knowing enough about how that would be, would that mean that, same exact example, subdivision, people come before, and all of a sudden there's now this opportunity, right, for no more roads to be classified as town roads. I don't know if that is the case or not the case, but so let's just say an example, the Maple Ridge development or some other development, they come forward, say we have a village district in place, right? How do we define that village district so that when that subdivision comes forward, those people that live in that subdivision to get the town, to get it classified as a town road. If the voters say no, does that then fall in the village district? Because it would be a private road.
It would depend on how you set up the village
So,
district.
yeah, so that's what I mean.
The village
I
district
think-
is a geographical thing, so you,
Is it though? Is
Yeah,
it a
it is.
geographical?
yeah, it's a, I don't have
So
to,
it's
I don't know if it
con-
has to be
it's
contiguous.
contiguous.
So it would have to be, so if we look at the map of private roads, kind of just snapshot, a lot on Pawtuckaway, a lot on North River Lake,
Would be separate.
and then so those would be separate, and then it does, the Nottingham Lake have some private roads, and then there's some kind of sprinkled around town, a few.
Everything's on a pond.
So we would possibly
Cedar
have 3 village districts?
Yeah, I think they have to be contiguous, but the important part about a village is it has to be a creation of the people that live in that geography. So
Right.
it's not something the town can
Right.
compel, and politically, that does not seem viable. If your choices are, well, the town will maintain your road, or you can go create a separate government and maintain your road for you and charge you more for it. Politically, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. So,
All right.
does it matter? Yeah.
I think if we're going to look into it, because we don't know if it will come up or not, I think it's something that we should look at. What does that mean
Yeah.
to the town, and how it gets administered?
We can, I agree, but it's less of an issue now with new developments going in, right? Because they have stricter guidelines and standards, right, that they have to meet in order to get the town to accept the road. I mean,
I don't know that they have stricter.
clearly defined.
They have defined.
They have clearly defined,
to have it classified as a town road.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of for them, it's normal course of business.
But my understanding is, if it is a village district, those roads do have to be brought up to a certain level of quality. No?
No, because it's a separate entity, really.
No, a village district would make its own definitions about what it wanted with its roads. That's the political benefit, and that the people that live on them get to make the decisions about them.
So if you had, if just, I'm going to just use Pawtuckaway Lake, because that's the one I'm most familiar with. So if I lived on Pawtuckaway Lake, and there was a whole bunch of people that wanted to do a village district, and someone lives on Jasper Trail Road, which is much different than Bardary Lane, which I'm more familiar with. So all those people would have to say, okay, here's the standards we're going to meet, or go road by road, or, I mean, those are the questions I have. Like, what does that mean if it's a village
If
district?
you had a village district and it included both of those roads, any whatever the geography
Whatever
is, you
it
draw it on the map.
Right.
All of the residents, the voters within that geography, become voters in a village district like they are in the school district. And that little government only does roads, and they take on the authority for those. So
They
there's
have
no.
a governing board just like our board.
they
Right,
would
I
have- they'd have
understand
a-
that.
yeah,
And so who owns the road at that point in time when the village district manages it?
Nothing changes,
Nothing changes on the road.
not on ownership. no.
So then, if you had a village district, what happens to all the building requirements around building on a private road and subdividing on a private road? Those all stay within the RSAs, in the way that the RSAs
Yeah,
are
because the
built?
village district would be for the purposes of maintaining.
Just maintaining the
Yes.
roads.
It's a very specific purpose.
And to do that, would you need landowner permission?
Yes, in some cases, all the village district is doing is taking the place of the town in the function of road maintenance.
Because my understanding
So-
is you would need the landowner
If-
permission, and you would need the
A
easement.
road owner.
Road owner,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, if you want to perform maintenance on a private road, you theoretically need the owner's permission to do so, or at least give them an opportunity to deny it, which is what happens with the emergency lanes. We theoretically have given the owners of those roads an opportunity to stop us from designating them an emergency lane, and none have done so that I'm aware of.
Right.
Same thing would happen with the village district.
Okay, so if we go back to the options, I think that pretty much covers all of them, unless, I mean, you're working off a slightly different list if you have something different.
Yeah, we had valuing the public benefit of current ELs.
Yeah, which I mean falls into that whole
Yeah.
policy review, right? I mean, I'm kind of lumping together, somebody said at the beginning of the meeting, talking about having an annual review to see if they meet a certain standard, which to me is kind of all in that category of, we believe the policy needs to be tightened up, and, you know, that would define standards, and then that would likely incorporate some type of a, you know, periodic review, right?
Mm-hmm. Chris, do we have any class 6 roads that are ELs?
No.
Anything else? Is the public going to be allowed to speak? As I said twice, yes. When we're done having our discussion. Okay? All right, what else?
Do we want to get into the discussion of road maintenance and the law?
Go ahead.
Do we want to get into discussion of road maintenance and the law?
It may be good for the townsfolk to know what the law actually is with respect to what the town should and should not be doing and can and cannot do.
Yeah. Do you want to take it?
Go ahead.
So the law clearly defines that the town cannot use public money for private benefit, and private roads are considered a private benefit. The emergency lane classification allows the town to do some level of maintenance on the road. It does not mean that we have to. It does not mean that we are obligated to. It means we can. And the law is really clear on that.
So that's where, that's where when we go back to 2011 and 1995, right? When this was all brought up, we can. And there is some wiggle room in that by the use of the word other, right? Snow plowing and maintenance and other.
When can I?
If I could finish.
Go ahead.
And so for me, there's the two things. There's the, for lack of a better term, the wiggle room in the way that it's expressed, combined with the fairness, right? And the fairness of providing a service that's been provided all along for as long as most people in this room have lived here, right? And to me, I think, you know, I think that at the time that it was established, that was the best, fairest compromise that the board could come up with, right?
May I?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've taken the Hard Road to Travel New Hampshire Municipal Association workshop twice. I've asked the question twice, can the town plow roads? In each case, I have been told no. That is a use of public money for private benefit. I've also had people come up to me after that and say, I can't believe that you folks are plowing the roads. That's a total misuse of public money.
Well, I don't think we're the only town that
So-
doing that is
So
doing that.
I'm stating fact. I'm stating
Hold on,
fact.
folks, hold on.
I'm just
Hold
stating
on.
fact.
Come on, guys, please, please.
I am stating fact. I'm stating fact.
Listen, folks, this is the way that it's going, okay? The board has not had an opportunity to discuss it. That's what we're doing right here. In fairness and out of respect to the members of the board, please let us get through this discussion. You guys will all have your opportunity to get up and speak, okay? I'm sorry that you don't believe that.
I don't believe that. I think you guys just want to talk until we leave.
You know what? You know what? You couldn't be further from the truth. Okay?
You care about this problem. You care about this bunch of angry people.
Let's let them get through what they need to get through. This isn't
Go ahead, Charlene.
Yeah. So as far as fairness, I think we have to look at, and this board has to look at the fairness for the whole community. And so there are folks who live on private roads that aren't classified as emergency lanes that maintain their own roads. There are folks who live on Class 6 roads that have to maintain that road. There are folks that live on the state roads that don't get any town road plowed. The state plows it.
Well,
So
they're still getting it plowed. I mean, that's kind of.
they're still
they're
getting
it
plowed. They're still getting plowed, but there's no, the highway department isn't driving down their road, plowing the road, the state is.
I
But
don't understand.
I'm just saying, in fairness, you have to look at the whole community. You can't look at little pockets of the community.
Sure, but I mean, the state thing, I mean, they're getting their roads plowed maybe faster than ours, than the rest, but.
They're getting the road plowed, but I'm saying there's no town plow driving down that road.
Yeah. Guys?
This isn't going to be an easy fix. However, the board has an obligation to both sides of the argument here. Those who have had these roads maintained for a number of years expect a certain level of service to continue. However, the board has a obligation to stay within and meet the criteria under the law. As you pointed out earlier, Donna, this is not going to be a quick fix. This is going to be multi-meetings. Hopefully we can all just come to a compromise as to how we can fix this, that everybody is happy, and that, as you mentioned earlier, we can finally put this to rest. But we do have an obligation to both sides. Well, again, we have an obligation to those on the private roads as well as public roads. We're one community. We are one community.
Chris, you had a chance to look into what the surrounding communities around us do in terms of their emergency lanes and the numbers that they had. Do you have that?
Numbers are hard. None of our neighbors use them. I've found 6 or 7 other towns in the state that use them at all. I've researched where I can, ask my peers, and look for examples of how other towns are doing it. We're unique in the level of maintenance that we do. We are among 2 or maybe 3 with the volume or the mileage of roads that we do. It's of the examples I found, most towns are plowing but not maintaining. They don't do anything around maintenance, and they've got clearly identified private landowners that do that kind of stuff. And most, all but 1 or maybe 2 have pretty strict, or maybe a better way to say it is they've not stretched the public benefit clause in the law as we have. They have a higher standard of what is the benefit to the public at large for making that designation. So we're unique, not alone, but pretty close.
Other thoughts and comments?
I think the only thing that I'd like to see is kind of like, okay, so we're holding this workshop. Should we schedule another workshop? Because we need to continue to address this.
Yeah, we're not going to schedule it tonight. We don't, but yeah,
but,
we'll have
I
Chris.
mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Okay, I'm allowing additional opportunities for the board to bring up points. before we open it up.
And just bring up a point that, again, everybody's here for a reason. I think we've all said before, I don't think there's any way, as of right now, we could stop the services that we've been providing. But I would say, as someone that moved to town into a new development, where everything was met to the highest standards there was, to have to pay for that maintenance of that road and stuff for a year, I believe that's wrong too. Because the roads are paved, this, that, and you have to wait for the town meeting, which I understand. But as we saw last year, we had a road that, because somebody didn't show, it's almost like it's a joke to say, well, they had to wait another year. I mean, I think that's BS. So, that's all I got to say.
I think that's kind of what you were alluding to when you were talking about fairness to everyone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Ben?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I agree with you, Tyler, and I totally get that, you know. It's just stickier and thornier with these old roads, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
That's what makes Nottingham such a good place to
That's
live.
what makes us unique. All right.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Can you just hang-
redefine emergency
Can you hang on for a second, please?
emergency
Just
lane
hang on for a second.
everyone?
Okay. Any other? Anything else? Yeah, if you could do that for us, please. Define emergency lane.
The RSA.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a
Doesn't
clear,
really have a definition.
it doesn't have a definition. I mean, it's pretty much what you just read about.
It is a private or Class 6 road upon which the Board of Selectmen have made this designation in order to keep it passable for emergency vehicles. Class 6 is a town-owned road that the town does not maintain. So it retains ownership of it but doesn't do anything on it. We have a couple in town, Silly, French, a couple in the state park that are still owned by the town for some strange reason. Bits and pieces of roads. It's not really a concern for us. All of our emergency lanes are private roads. There is no definition of what a private road is. So a private road can take many forms. It can be a shared driveway, I suppose. It can be something like a condo association like Mendham's Landing owns a road and they maintain it, they privately own it. A private road can be owned by one person and other owners can have the right to drive over it. It can be owned in common by people on it. We have a whole hodgepodge of different ownership flavors of private roads in town. And we have a handful of roads that we really don't know who owns them.
Right, correct. All right, any other discussion or comments amongst the board, questions before we open it up for public comment?
The village is that similar to association, right?
No, it's, a village is a government. An
Okay.
association is a private entity.
Is that an option?
What?
If the roads are wanting to form an association?
Yes, that's very common. That's what you see in most, most towns. You'd see, and particularly the lake towns in New Hampshire, they're littered with road associations.
Yeah, so they're homeowners, in most cases, they're homeowners associations.
Right.
But they're for purposes of, you know, well, you know, social events. You know, paying dues for $10 a year to buy meat for the barbecue. The challenge with that in this particular instance is that an association doesn't really have any authority to assert that somebody contributes to maintenance for a road. You have no authority to do that. So what?
It depends on how it's legally structured.
Yeah, it depends how true, fair enough. But probably the way that most of them are today, there isn't that authority. So you would have half of the people for the association covering the entire thing. So that's the concern about that. But I interrupted you, so go ahead.
No, that's where I was going with that.
Okay.
So you're saying as the village side would actually have more say in it versus the association.
Right, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in a village district, the town would actually collect the money, correct?
Yeah, the town would act as a tax collector for a village district, like it does for the school district, in a way.
Yep. All right, anything else? What do you mean rotate?
There are people here that want to speak on both sides.
Everybody here wants to speak. We're going to invite them to line up and, okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to open it up to public comment now. I'm going to ask that you guys be respectful of the members of the board here. There are varying opinions on the board, but that's what makes this board work well, and it's what serves this town well. Every decision that's made, everything that happens is well thought out, well discussed. So please respect the members of the board here. I'm going to ask that if you want to make comments that you line up over there in that aisle right there to your right. Please, state your name when you come up. For the record, make sure that Dawn over there can hear it. Do you need address too, Dawn?
I actually put a piece of paper over at the podium for people to sign print their name.
Okay, so when you come up to speak, please print on the form. Please, if possible, let's avoid 25 people coming up and making the same comment over and over again. We certainly don't want to shut anybody down, but we do want to avoid repetitiveness, okay? So I'll invite people to line up.
Good evening. My name's Kip Belladron. I live on 49 Bardary Lane, and I'd like to speak to the Board of Selectmen that the reason that we all kind of got together here was because of the 12-3 meeting you guys had. And as we watched it go by, my wife and I says, hey, these guys are just, they've made their mind up. We might not even need a meeting. There's a certain amount of the people on the board, I don't mean to ruffle feathers, that called us ignorant of the law, but that was not really necessary. There's others that said, well, it's the law, it's the way it's going to be. We're going to tell them in the spring what we're going to do. That's not what we hired you people for. No. Not at all. We didn't hire you people for that. We hired you people to protect us, to make sure that our will and necessary is to be taken care of, just like every other person in town. Now, there's 428 houses that are on emergency lanes, and we paid 22% of the total taxes in this damn town. And there's $2.9 million coming out of our pockets going into the coffers for the town. And you have a nerve to tell us that because you've been doing it for 50 years illegally? I don't know what happened to all the other people that brought this up. They didn't get it right, so maybe we just got to fix it instead of saying we're not going to do it anymore. And put a period at the end. The tax dollars that we pay, the check is written directly to the town. There is absolutely no place on that check or that bill to send a check to the landowner to fix the road. So if you think they're profiting from it, you're wrong. The ones that are profiting from it are you, the people that spend the money. You take our money and you decide that I want to not plow these roads or maintain these roads anymore. You said it's a legal issue, not a monetary issue, until you got down to the culvert, and then it was money. Had nothing to do with legal issues. It had to do, we want to spend the money. Some of you said yes. Others of you said no. Others said maybe. But you all said that it was the town's not responsible. It's the responsibility of the landowner. Landowner receives no funds. You guys do. There's a budget of approximately $200,000 that's being spent in the road, on roads and so forth. And we had nobody leading the charge. We don't have a road manager anymore. And to have that budget, to have that large budget not being scrutinized, and these people that work for the town not being told what to do and how to do it, is probably not the best way to do it. We pay excessive taxes because everybody feels that everybody down on the lake is rich. Well, that's a misnomer. A lot of these homes down there were left to people. A lot of people bought them, camps, and then as they retired, they built these bigger homes. They paid bigger tax bills. They put no children through the school. So we're not a big burden on that portion. There's over 200 that are non-residents that own homes down there. They are no burden on the town. So I don't understand why that you think that the rest of the people in this town deserve to have their roads plowed and we don't. And I don't understand why you don't think that our tax money is paying for that person that's driving that truck, paying the bill on that tractor, and the bills on everything in town. But in the meantime, you guys appear to be just taking it away from us because you don't feel that emergency lanes should be taken care of. We have a whole bunch of elderly people that need the support from you people that have paid taxes in this town for over 50 years, and now you're going to say, you're going to raise our taxes again? You raised the taxes an enormous amount this year on some of us. It's $1,000 a year. And now you're going to raise it again by telling us we got to go an association or some BS? You're just raising the taxes on these people again. That's what we're asking. Please just fix it and put it to bed. Yeah, forever. You're just wasting taxpayers' money. We just keep bringing it up and making everybody upset. Thank you.
I want to thank the selectmen for giving us
Hey,
this.
sorry, Pam, just to interrupt, if you can.
Oh, my name.
Yeah, just
Yes.
state your name as
I'm
well.
sorry.
That's okay.
Pamela Kelly, and I live at 35 Saks Road. And I do want to thank the selectmen for giving us a chance to address this issue. I think this is a fine example of democracy at work, and I appreciate it. I am hard-pressed to understand some of the concerns that are being voiced by the selectmen now. I don't know where this is coming from. It's my understanding that the town has been maintaining and plowing these roads, especially around the lake, which is my experience, for more than 50 years. And it's been working well. We pay our taxes, the town is. In 1994, a law was passed. And that gave the town the opportunity of declaring these roads that had been maintaining for many, many years as emergency lanes. That's the only thing that changed, as far as I can tell. And in 2011, the selectmen decided to make a policy in writing to sort of solidify what the town has been doing for 50-odd years. So nothing really has changed, except maybe some policies and the way the town is talking about it, but the town has been maintaining these roads. Isn't that right? Is anybody, how long has the town been maintaining these roads?
There's no hard fact dates, but it's been a long time.
40s, 50s?
Something like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a long time. And as far as I can tell, there haven't been any problems. It's worked. I don't know why this is being brought up now. I don't think it matters whether we call them emergency lanes or not. It's what the town has been doing for 50-plus years. And, you know, my opinion is that the town did follow the law when it was enacted in 1994. I think it did properly restate everything in 2011. And I don't think my opinion is any worse or better than the selectmen's opinion. Laws are often need to be interpreted. There's often a difference of opinion among various residents and people, citizens, about the meaning, the application, and the interpretation of a law. And so I have a different opinion than, say, one of the Board of Selectmen. I don't think my opinion is better than yours. I don't think your opinion is better than mine. This has never been challenged in court. And so, as far as I can tell, the court is the place where interpretation of law is done. When there's a difference of opinion about what a law means or how it applies, you go to the court. That's what their business is. They do that every day. And if we don't know, and I don't even know why we have to raise this issue. It's been working fine. Is the town afraid of something? I would like to know, what is the town afraid of? Afraid of being sued by somebody? Why is this happening? Can you tell me? Anybody, please?
Do you want to take that, Shelley?
Nobody.
Yeah.
There's no reason why this is coming up, please?
So let me back up even a little bit further, and that what this board has been doing in the board prior to this existing board has been doing is looking at all of the roads and how can we address all of the roads. Through that, then what really accelerated this was in October?
Thereabouts.
In October, thereabouts of this year, a culvert on a private road in the town of Raymond busted.
Mindel.
Busted. A beaver dam broke and it started washing out the road. Well, that road starts in Raymond, private road, not maintained by the town, not classified as an emergency lane by the town. That road then leads into Nottingham.
Okay, so that was the precipitating factor.
So that's kind of what brought up.
Okay.
And then Bardary Lane just recently happened, and so again, we started discussing it.
Okay.
So that's why it's
Okay.
been kind of come to the forefront.
Okay. I think that what the town did was legal. I think the 2011 policy was legal and in accordance with the law. And I don't know, maybe there's a difference of opinion.
The 2011 policy was created because there was a lack of documentation to show that emergency lane classifications over the years were done properly within the public realm.
Understood, yeah. I do understand that. And I think there was nothing wrong with that. But I don't think that changes anything. I think that means that what the town has been doing for 50 or 60 years continues to be appropriate and proper. And if the town is afraid of something, and that's why this is all coming up, I understand there was a problem with Mindel Road. I think that got resolved. I think the Bardary culvert got resolved as well. And so I don't know why that means this has to, if it has to go to court, I'm taking up a collection, everybody. I have a wonderful lawyer. I am going to be contacting you for your contribution to pay the fees of this lawyer. His name is Paul Alfano. He is an expert in the town. And so I'll be getting in touch with you, because if we need to have the court decide this, I'll lead the charge.
Okay, Pam. There's other people lined up behind you.
Oh, yeah.
Are you done? Thanks.
Hi, Marsha Carey, and I live on 39 Siemens Point Road. And I want to say that as far as the village districts, I don't think they work. You get a lot of people that agree to it, yet they do not pay their taxes and they do not pay into it. I've seen this happen with friends of mine in North Conway, and a lot of people just said, we're not paying now that it's done. And what is your recourse? Now, I understand, I could be wrong, and please correct me, but I'm to understand that we have $500,000 in unpaid taxes in our town. So if you can't get $500,000 paid to you, how can we, on a street, get somebody to pay their fair share?
So there's more complexity to the unpaid taxes in town, okay? There are, in some circumstances, people who fall on hard times, and the town is not going to jump at the first possible moment to take somebody's house away from them. So when you talk about unpaid taxes, there's some of that going on, and you know, I would hope that we would never lose the compassion in that situation.
Well, I understand some, but we're talking about a lot more percentage that can and do not. And I think the other thing that gets me is the rest of the town says, why should we pay for their roads? We don't get anything out of it. I don't know how many times I've had people up there because we have no heat, we have no electricity, there's no cable. Well, guess what? If these people cannot get down our roadways, everybody in town suffers. How long have you gone without heat? How long have you gone without electricity? You don't want to go too long without that. And I'll tell you one other thing. I just want to put a human aspect on this. As we're looking at it from rules and regulations, have you ever seen your neighbor burned to death? Mr. Day, man next door to me, next house over, I went and we worked on his house before that fire truck could get down there. And we had rakes, we had everything that we could possibly have. And we couldn't find him. And finally I heard this man moaning, coming around the side of his house. He didn't have a stitch of clothes on, and the skin was falling off his body. Do you want this on your conscience? Is it really worth it? Think about this. Think about this. It could be your house, your neighbor's house, and like somebody else said, a fire. Those, you know, if that fire had gone, it would have destroyed all of one side of the lake, if not more. And nobody can give you an actual total of how much it would have destroyed, how many lives it would have destroyed. And I think sometimes you have to think about that. And the people that are paying taxes and are upset about us being on these private roads, just think next time you don't have electricity and you don't have cable. It's our roads that everybody's coming down. They're working on my land because that's where a lot of the telephone lines are, and with that came electrical lines and came cable lines. So it's like, come on, I've put in my fair share. My land works for everybody, and I want you to just work it for me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kyle Murdoch. I noticed a lot of people are really upset, and I just want to point out something that the board said right from the very get-go. They gave you 4 or 5 options, and everyone up there said basically the same thing. The final 4, they don't really even put much merit in. You all pretty much agreed that nobody wants to stop, so right up the first person up here is like, you're going to stop. They all said they don't even think that's a viable option. Ben brought up, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Tony.
Tony. Tony was brought up right off the bat, you know, the emergency lane, there's no real designation. We need to designate it. I think the clear, more reasonable thing here is we just define the emergency lane, things will go on, but as you mentioned, things will need to be redesignated, will need to be relooked at. You said there's plenty of holes in it. There are. I mean, what's to stop a developer from coming in and saying that I want to be an emergency lane? What's to stop all these private roads that are not emergency lanes to come forward and now say, I want to be an emergency lane? And I can tell you one of the things that has brought this up. You're right, around the lake, there are plenty of roads. For those of you who don't know, I own Trash Busters. I have the unique ability to drive literally every single dirt road in this town on a weekly basis for 28 years. If there is anyone that can tell you how much damage that does to big commercial vehicles, trust me, it costs me a fortune. But with that being said, there are also roads over there that are not big enough for a plow truck. They're not. Those are what needs to be addressed. I mean, you got ones that Barderry's nice and wide going in, Shore Drive's nice and wide going in. You mentioned Seaman's Point. Seaman's Point, you start getting down there, there's somebody that's got Jersey barriers on the road. That road is like 11 feet wide. The plows on our trucks are 11 feet wide. We literally have to send a different truck over to plow certain roads. That is costing extra money. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't spend that money, but one question I have that everybody keeps mentioning taxes, and I don't know this, so this is a question for you guys. Is there do property assessments that our tax rates are based on, does someone on a town road, a public road, get assessed at a higher value than somebody on a private road?
No.
Okay, so there is no difference. Nobody on this side of town is paying a higher percentage of taxes than that side or this side. So taxes are the same across the board.
If there's something in the market where, you know, one neighborhood sells differently than in another neighborhood, then that would be reflected in assessments, but there is no.
In property tax assessment?
Yeah,
Okay.
the market sets that, but there's nothing in.
So in other
there's
words-
nothing in our assessment data that says this house is on a private road or this house is on a public road.
So what you're saying is somebody on a private road is not paying a lesser percentage of tax
No.
than somebody on a town road?
No.
So in
Generally-
that argument, then I agree with these people, they're paying for it. The question does become, I think, more, like you said, we need to establish this policy, because there are holes in the policy. Establish a policy, this is what it is, this is what you need to meet, and if we're doing maintenance, the big issue, again, like I said, for those of you who also don't know, I do part-time for the highway department, so I'm one of those poor saps for 36 straight hours that are plowing some of your roads. The amount of damage done to the town trucks on those roads far outweighs the entire rest of the town. Now, that's not to say that's a bad, that can be fixed, but to fix it, and this is something I hope everyone around the lake realizes, I've got no problem with us taking all these roads, saying I'm for that. Let's fix them, let's plow them. I got no problem with that. But you have to understand they have to be fixed. We need some sort of designation that allows the town to fix that, because right now it's private property. The town cannot fix it. And that does mean widening roads. I drive all of your roads. We widen some of those roads, and you guys now have no front yard. You have no shed. Some of you would lose a garage. I mean, there are literally spots where I go by with a plow that I have to worry about a plow not hitting your shed. That's a problem for the town. That's where the extra money gets spent by the town. I think we just need to figure out a way to not spend extra money, and that probably comes with fixing. And if it comes with fixing, that's fine, but we gotta find a way to say, yes, we're gonna fix this road, and which ones are we gonna fix? And which ones maybe, like you said, just, we can't designate them anymore, you know, so. Anyways.
Thank you.
That's it.
Can I? Go ahead.
And by the way, by saying that I work for that I'm part-time, I by no way am any opinion of I'm just a resident who happens to work part-time in the winter plowing, so that was no part of, I'm not speaking on behalf of the highway department.
Can I just ask, in fairness to poor Dawn, who's trying to take notes over there, if we could kind of keep the background rumbling down a little bit? Just, she has a hard time hearing to take notes when there's a lot of background noise.
Probably gonna have a hard time reading these signatures too. Ed Veal, Garland Road. So I know this is a very emotional topic, and I want to thank the board for doing their due diligence. Like every board in town, there's a requirement and an expectation from the voters that from time to time we review our policies, we review our regulations to ensure that they're, you know, conforming to state law, and we tweak them as necessary. Something that worked 5 years ago may not be appropriate and needs to be adjusted for now and for the future. So I do think, and I support one of the options on there, which was look at the long-term plan for the roads. And so first, ensure that we're conforming to state law. And once that's, then look at the long-term plans for the road and improve, and either improve them and bring them up to Class 5 standards, which is what we require for developers. And then go through the town process of coming to town meeting, petitioning, and having them accepted as a town road. That gets rid of all the gray area. I do think there might have been a mistake. I think in the assessing that there is a factor built in for people that live on dirt roads, and it actually is a multiplier. So if you're on a dirt road, your total assessed value actually, or total tax actually does come down somewhat. It may be high. I understand these properties pay a high tax. I understand that, but I watch the sales listings that come through, and the assessed values and the sale prices are often very, very close, which tells me the town is doing a good job with their assessing team, and trying to make sure that that is accurate. another reason I think that's very important that you're addressing this is it's to give guidance to other town boards, to tell planning board, zoning board, assessing what they should be doing, in that we have to treat developers and everybody else that comes in the town fairly, and we're sending things through to other boards to be looked at when potentially that could be cleared up. I had a question about emergency lanes and private roads. Can the general public utilize these roads? Or if a person in the general public that has no other reason for being on that road utilize that road, are they technically trespassing?
No.
Because it's private property, is it not?
It's private property.
So,
But there's nothing that prohibits anybody from going down those roads.
except they're on private land and they're technically trespassing.
Well, yeah, but there's nobody that,
But they could.
We actually have many people that park on our roads and access the lake, that are either residents or non-residents.
So,
Okay,
again, I just think
let's
the
let
long-term
Ed
plan
finish
for the
up.
roads and getting them and finding out what.
can I
you know,
just
make
ask
sure that we're-
everybody be quiet, please? Let Ed speak. Thank you.
Just to make sure that we're conforming to state law and that there's a long-term plan in place and it's clearly identified for everybody so that it's easy and it's fair so that people can see, yep, you know, I meet these criteria, I should continue on, and I think that's ideal. So thank you very much for
Good.
taking your time and looking at this.
Steve White, Whites Grove Road. My family's been on the lake since 1946. I've been up here since 1978, and I'm a real estate broker, so I'm going to tell you a few things that might be startling. But I would be remiss if I didn't recognize and point out the best road agent we ever had, John Fernald.
Wrong, Colonel. That's Jim.
Talking about the wrong person. I'm Dave. That's my brother. I don't take any credit.
You know what it is? They're both good-looking guys, and I'm old, so. So I want to thank the board for the opportunity, and there's only 2 points that I would like to make as a practicing broker. First of all, how many here think your values are going to go up if the town doesn't maintain your road? It is harder for buyers to get financing on our homes when there are road associations to deal with instead of town-maintained roads. I've worked with many of you in this room, and buying in Nottingham was a home run because you purchased on a lake that had a town-maintained road. Now you live where others vacation, but we pay taxes for it. These folks have the responsibility of listening to us and figuring out how to solve this problem. And I have a lot of faith in them because I think they've seen the voters speak tonight. Thank you very much.
Wait, before, Liz, just hold on a second. So Steve, I know you're involved in real estate. You know, if you have data that shows us the impact of property values on town-maintained versus non-town-maintained roads, I'd love to see it. So if you could get that data for us, that would be extremely helpful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz Katowski. I live on 14 Indian Run, which is a small road off of Lamprey Drive and Dolph Dam Road. It was a great segue, actually, where Steve was talking about property values and buyers, because when my husband and I bought on the lake, it was 2006. It was like a really happy day for me. We, like a lot of people, probably everybody here who bought or built, it was attractive to think about buying here because you knew that the roads would be maintained. They had been maintained for a long time. And I have to say that if we didn't have that guarantee, or what we thought was a guarantee when we bought here, we probably would have gone somewhere else because we really wouldn't have wanted to take that chance. Anyway, I think there's some things that the town has done to kind of give people the false impression, apparently, that maybe we have been taking things for granted. But look at the town website. I printed this out today, so it's up there right now. It says, under Highway Department, in addition to town-owned roads, the town has designated approximately 10 miles of private roads as emergency lanes and keeps these roadways clear and safe for emergency vehicle traffic. So let's say you're thinking about moving here. You read that and you go, oh, that's great. Or you go to the 2011 master plan, which has something in the transportation section on emergency lanes. This gets more specific. It says these roads are designated by the town or city in accordance with New Hampshire RSA 231-59A, such that a town may raise and appropriate, and the selectmen may expend money for the repair of any Class 6 highway or private way which has been declared an emergency lane under paragraph 2. That's earlier. Such repair may include removal of brush, repair of washouts and culverts, or any other work deemed necessary to render such way passable by firefighting equipment and rescue or other emergency vehicles. These are our own town documents that lead us to believe that, in fact, we can count on our roads being maintained. I have kind of a few miscellaneous other points I'd like to make. One is that we keep hearing about, oh, there's no public purpose above and beyond the ones that we receive as residents on these roads. And in fact, I just did a little brain dump of what I think the public purposes are above and beyond ours for Dolph Dam Road, which you take that off of 156, and from that you go to Lamprey Drive, and from that you go to Indian Run, where I live. So here are the public purposes that I came up with for my road, and I'm sure you have some for your roads as well. Access for logging. We've had quite a bit of logging on Lamprey Drive at one point or another in Indian Run, where forests were being managed. So access for logging. Access for New Hampshire DES to monitor the flow and water quality of the Pawtuckaway River and control the flow from the lake to prevent flooding and/or drought conditions downstream. Access for New Hampshire Electric Co-op to reach down trees, power lines, and transformers that serve not only the residents on each road, but also the residents on roads across the lake. In fact, this was the purpose that was allowed by the Board of Selectmen when Indian Run was approved as an emergency lane in 2007, after a public hearing. As it turns out, the major line that runs to the end of Indian Run then goes under the lake and goes around. And so if we have problems over in our area, it affects lots and lots of houses. Access for public water rescues. There have been a number of those over the years. Access for fire trucks that have put out at least 2, you can call them wildland fires or forest fires in our neighborhood, that had they spread, they would have taken out some houses. And that's just in the last 5 years. Access for hunters. On Lamprey Drive, there's a nice little clearing, and we see hunters' cars parked there all the time, and they go off and use that. There's also a trail that goes off and that can access the Bacon easement, which is a conservation easement in town. And we also see a lot of bicyclists and pedestrians, people walking dogs or whatever, on our road. There's no gate. There's nothing that keeps the public out. We are happy to share our roads with people. I mean, obviously, I don't want somebody launching their boat from my front lawn, because that's not feasible. But, you know, the road itself is very accessible to the public. And so, you know, we think that it goes way above and beyond just our living on that road. I also want to mention that our tax cards, if you look at them and it says road on it, gravel. That's what it says for Priest Road, Stevens Hill Road, and a lot of the Class 5 roads that are here in town. It says gravel. It doesn't say emergency lane. It doesn't say may or may not be maintained by the town and or anything like that. It just gives you the impression on our tax cards, which are another thing that people look at when they are considering buying here in Nottingham. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of things that lead people to believe and have led people to believe that they could count on maintenance of these roads for a long, long time. I do have other information that I could talk about, and maybe I'll send to the selectmen. But one of those things is that I did work on the emergency lane policy with the selectmen at that time in 2011. And after the policy was finalized, there was a piece in there about how the residents will put up signage. Well, I can't tell you how many times I went to our then administrator, and I may have even talked to Chris at some point when he first came on board, and I talked to several selectmen and said, what should we do about the signage? It says we're supposed to do this. You know, how should we design these signs and put them up? And I was told, oh, don't worry about that. You know, so I can't say whether you said that or not, Chris, but I know that I did ask that question many times and tried to find out how we could be in compliance with the policy. So, you know, there are a lot of good people here who are really part of the fabric of this community, who volunteer, who do lots of things. And we do not want to set up an us and them situation in this town, you know, where some people get services and some don't. We pay our taxes, and they're hefty at this point, but we pay them, and we do deserve the services that we've come to expect. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hal Rafter, North River Lake Road. I have to admit I was on the board when all of this first came up in 2011. And I think some of the history is that the roads, private roads have always been maintained by the town. But in 2010, 2011, there was an issue raised because many of the roads were not designated emergency lanes at that point. And in order to continue spending town money to maintain them, they had to be adopted. So the policy, which obviously has a few holes, I think, as somebody may have said, was developed. There was also a hearing conducted, which is required under the emergency lane law, which took input from the public regarding, I forget, there were 15 or 20 private roads that were designated at that point. We took testimony on those roads from the public. And after that testimony, the board made the declaration that those roads were in fact emergency lanes. So since then, the town has had legal authority to, I think as we've discussed tonight, do pretty much any maintenance they want, including plowing, repairs, brush clearing, whatever. It's at the discretion of the town. It's also clear that the town has discretion to designate roads as lanes or withdraw the declaration, but there should be some just cause for that. I think the policy was put in place as guidelines for boards that came after us to have some criteria, but bottom line is you can declare or not declare any private road an emergency lane or not. After that 2011 action was taken, when we designated those 15 or 20, there were requests for other private roads to be declared as emergency lanes, and those were declined. So there's both a history of designating and not designating, you know, based on requests. So it's gone both ways. But I guess my view is that it's really a settled issue. There was a hearing done in 2011, there was testimony taken, the board made a declaration, and there's a history, there's documentation as to what was done back then. So I don't know that, you know, the board or the town has any liability. Certainly that declaration designated them as emergency lanes, and the town has authority to maintain them. So I guess I'm coming at it from more of a legal technical point of view, but I don't know that there's any issue at this point in terms of liability for the town or the ability of the town to maintain or not maintain. if people make other requests for other private roads to be adopted as emergency lanes, then, it's certainly at the discretion of the board. But as everybody said, it's kind of an equity issue as well, as far as taxpayers go. So, thank you.
My name's Dee Decker, live on Lakeview Drive, and I'd like to thank the board for their time in listening to us and bringing this back up again. It rears its ugly head, it seems like, every 5 to 10 years, and it's been doing this for a number of years. And so I would really like you guys to do everything that you can to put this to bed once and for all. We clearly need a definition of what maintenance is in the policy. I think you guys agree with that. You guys talked about public benefit, and I just have a couple of thoughts on public benefit that I'd like to share. And I want to make sure that you know that I at least heard you all say that as far as you're concerned, stopping the plowing, that's not an issue. But it's the maintenance part of it that is more of an issue. If the town stops maintaining and plowing emergency lanes, and emergency services can no longer access properties, this is one of my major concerns. Homeowners' insurances may be impacted. May be more expensive to get, and in some cases, people may not be able to get homeowners insurance at all if they're trying to get a mortgage on one of these properties. Properties may be difficult to sell, as Steve said, making sale prices lower. This would in fact lower all-around property values. This would make income to the town less, which would then have to be spread to the balance of the town, which would increase taxes for everyone else. In the case, also impacted, as Kyle said, is garbage services, heating and other fuel services, septic and other home maintenance, infrastructure, home nursing, and health care. We have a lot of elderly people who are on hospice, not so elderly people who need medical services. And if they can't get these services, it renders their properties basically it would have no value to them anymore if they can't heat them and be able to successfully live in them. And I'd like to also remind the board that in November, by a landslide, the state of New Hampshire overwhelmingly passed a law stating that individual taxpayers can sue the state and/or municipalities. So if we have a death or a serious injury because emergency services cannot get to one of these properties and the town gets sued, I think that's a bigger liability legally than most of the other things that we've been discussing.
Hello, my name is Ryan Melchiano. I live at 36 Poor Farm Road. I just think it's an ironic situation that we're all here tonight and we're talking about the potential of leaving a lot of these people blowing in the wind.
Ryan.
I think it's ironic that we're talking about leaving people on the private roads potentially blowing in the wind, and then there's people in my situation on some of these dirt roads where my road's going to be rebuilt 5 times over the next year, every year.
Ryan, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we are talking about emergency lanes tonight, so I do hope you're not going to kind of veer us away to problems with other individual roads.
Well, I'm just saying that the money that I think we are clearly wasting on roads like ours should be going to help these people. They're money pits. And you all recognized that last year. I don't have to preach to the choir. You voted for these improvements because you knew that's where all the resources were going. But what was killing us is that there's no numbers. You have no numbers to go to anyone else in the town and say, look, this is what we're spending. These are the hot spots. This is where we're hemorrhaging town funds. And if you had these numbers, you could sway more people to get rid of these money pits. And I just don't see a solution here tonight without getting in control of the budget and taking the money that you might be saving, in theory, and helping these people. So I've mentioned this to some of you in the past, but individually, but I don't, if we don't see any progress on this, I just don't see a solution. We have to know where this money is being spent, what roads, how bad is it, how often. I literally look out my window and I see my road, it gets all put back together, and then 3 days later it rains and it's gone. And then you come out and do it all over again. Maybe within a week and a half with these high traffic counts, the traffic, never mind the weather, just the traffic alone will put it back into a condition like it was last night when that accident happens. I mean, that's what's waiting for you if you get abandoned. I was the one who posted that photo of all of the emergency vehicles trying to get to that person that had that accident, and that shouldn't be happening. So I think if we want to ensure that the future looks a little better, we need to know where the money's going. Because there's all of these strong opinions in the town. People have this attitude of, I understand why, they don't want to see change. And it's hard. It's hard to convince them when you just don't have numbers. They're paying, they just don't know it. But to sway them, we need you involved. So it starts with you, putting it on paper and showing these people where the waste is. I'll leave it at that.
Good evening. My name is Bill Shimoni. I live at 33 North River Lake Road. And my wife and I moved here a couple of years ago for some of the things that were read earlier. In fact, I want to thank all the people who said all those great things that I don't have to repeat, and I probably wouldn't have said them as well. But that's part of why we chose Nottingham, the water, the quality, a good road. It's a dirt road. I had to change my vehicle to a pickup truck with four-wheel drive. It's no big deal. But in the past couple of years, and I work for a municipal government, and I work with the fire and the police people, and I understand what you as people who have to make decisions are tasked with. And in the 2 years that I've lived there, I've seen the ambulance come down our road, so I know it's wide enough to get an ambulance down. And I've seen individuals have their lives saved, and that's great. And I understand what the young lady said earlier about liability and being able to be sued. And I don't know, I'd rather be alive than have my heirs sue. I just don't think it's a good way, that's my choice. But I also wanted to add something that I don't think anybody else has said. Not that I'm smart, but I worked on a conservation commission in another municipality for about 20 years. And North River Lake Road, yeah, it's named after North River. And North River, if you look it up, it's 15 miles of snake winding river, typical New Hampshire river. And it goes through town. And when you drive the road, you can see how high the water is right now. And this is just barely winter. But right at the top, at the headwaters, right at the lake, is the North River, and they call it a pond, the North River Pond Dam. And it says, there's a sign, owned and operated by New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. And you know where they are, Concord. When I was on a conservation commission a few decades ago, we were able to get some money, both state and federal money, to ensure and guarantee access to a dam that we had in town. And I'm wondering if, as part of the analysis that comes out of this workshop, whether other avenues, revenue streams can be looked into. Is there something in federal or state money that says, yes, when you have a disaster and your dam gives and all that water goes rushing downstream and people's houses tumble, and I know a lot of houses are close to the river for good reasons, beautiful reasons. Are there some funds that we don't know about or we haven't discovered yet that we can look into? So I guess that's the last piece that I'll leave you with. Thank you very much.
I'm John Ternenko. I've lived in Nottingham for 52 years, not as long as Fernald's. I was raised in Newark, New Jersey. That says something about my behavior here. But the important thing is the ethers, the history, I don't know what to call it, but in the 52 years, Nottingham has really changed. I remember my first taxes. %80 of the tax dollars came from summer residents. So all the roads around Pawtuckaway, there was nobody living there in the winter. And whether or not we like it or not, that's a history that's influencing what's going on today. And I don't know how to get around that. But that's something you need to understand. So when we talk about the need of ambulances in winter, or access roads, nobody was there. And so we're going through a transition which is pretty major. It's sure not going to become Newark, so I'm safe here. That's all I have to say.
This year I'll be 52. My name is Paul Martin. I live at 3 Little John Lane. We've only been here about 9 years now. I want to say this is probably the best town and we could have ever picked. The people are nicest. Absolutely love being here. I'm only up here for 2 quick reasons, and that is if somebody finds himself in this room in the same situation that I am, it might be helpful. But as importantly, it may be helpful to you as the can of worms I'm going to mention. When we bought our property, it was listed as a paved road, and I asked the realtor that, and they said, oh, that just means that they maintain it and eventually get to paving it. I'm like, okay. As of now, knowing this for the past 2 or 3 weeks, my wife's like, we're moving. I'm like, no, we're not moving. So I went and saw Dawn and asked her about how you find out who actually owns the road, because here's the important part. I'm landlocked on Little John Lane with people above and beyond. I have to drive either that way or that way over somebody else's land if it's considered private property. And so my question to her was, how do you figure that out? And she explained to me what website to go to. I did that, still couldn't find it. And so I said, well, what happens if, since the land is flat and as it goes down, it gets destroyed 3 or 4 times a year, so much so one time my daughter almost rolled her car when she was 19. She's 26 and very well, very healthy, by the way. But because of the grading, so I said, what happens if that's now a private-owned road and it's flat? Well, I'm going to just go out that way because it's going to get degraded. And I thought, well, do I have to up my insurance because I have the right-of-way over it? Am I responsible if somebody else rolls their car or gets hurt or even gets killed? Do the people who live below me, do they need to raise their property? tax, I mean, their insurance for such liability. And that's the can of worms I'm presenting to you. Is that something that if it ever came to that situation that my road or somebody else's road is a private road that nobody knows who owns it, who's liable? I'm not asking that for a response, just for you get it. So I asked the people below me, I said, so if that push comes to shove and it becomes a road that they will no longer maintain, do you mind if I own my road or they own the land in front of my house, that road, if it's mine or yours, do you mind if I put a concrete wall across it, but not as a retort, as public safety? Because this is a road that the school children, the 5 parents and 6 kids walk down to the bottom of it's a bus stop. I sprained my shoulder, I dislocated my shoulder. I was out of work for 2.5 months. I sat one day and counted 87 cars going up, not just cars, vehicles, up and down my road in the span of 7 hours. And you say, how is that possible? Well, as Kyle will tell you, his trash truck, the other 2 trash trucks, the 5 or 6 FedExes and UPSs daily, half the people in the neighborhood use our street because it gets so narrow being a lake road. And so I just wanted to say that that's something that will happen if push comes to shove, and it's not a retort, it's for public safety. That's all.
Good evening. My name's Curtis Van Epps. I live at 40 Beachhead in Nottingham. I moved out here 7 years ago, so I'm a rookie. I just barely missed this last time, and I wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you for opening us up to the public. I think that's huge, and one of the reasons why I really enjoyed living in Nottingham. I have a statement of my opinion, and then I have just an observation. The statement is that we just got assessed. When I bought my property, I bought it from Michael Rose, who he and Danny actually built the property as a camp, and then they made many improvements on it. And then the town assessed me for more than I paid for it. And the taxes went up exponentially. And I can imagine that most people here over the last year to 2 years have had your taxes go up exponentially. And when we're talking about how the community benefits from our private roads, I can tell you that the taxes that we pay benefit this community greatly, not just ourselves. As a younger person of the community, I can really relate and feel for some of the elderly, as you'll often see me and some of my neighbors out with our little ATVs plowing our neighbors out. Sometimes appreciated, sometimes not. But we do our best because the town honestly doesn't do everything on our roads as it is. We get washed out on a regular basis, and if it were not for that man having a pickup truck, you cannot get in or out, period, on our road sometimes. We don't get services from the town other than the road. I do not have trash service unless I pay for it. I have to drive 30 minutes round trip to a recycling center. If a mouse passes gas in the wrong direction, I don't have electricity, so I have developed a system whereby my wife, who works from home on occasion, doesn't freeze to death. Okay, so how many of us have generators at our homes? That's not inexpensive. So these are all things we come to expect and understand living in Nottingham, okay? But one thing that I bought my property and didn't argue with the assessor and am paying my taxes on a regular basis while being mandated when I can use the lake and when I can't by y'all, okay? While having the Pawtuckaway Beach, I'm sure there's some revenue being generated there that helps the town and or the state. Okay,
There's
so
no revenue coming to the town.
okay, well, the state benefits. Okay, so there's other things there. We get no services other than the road. So I would ask and petition you to please consider at least the current, and here's my statement, the current ELR roads, leave them be. Leave them be. That is expected, and that's what all of us who moved to this town and all of us that came here, some of us newer, some of us from the beginning, have come to expect and what we, dare I say, demand for our people who are counting my vote and my expectation. Please maintain the current ones as expected, and then if there are new ones and new designations, let's let them follow the process. That's all I have to say, and thank you.
Whenever I do this, my wife's scared to death. Now, please forgive me. I come from Massachusetts. I'm just going to put on the table.
Could you speak closer to the mic?
Well, maybe it would be better. I just want to say, and please forgive me if I'm not, if I'm ignorant of some things, but I came here a little nervous tonight. I didn't know what to expect. And I just want to say that it's going to be tough, isn't it? It's going to be tough. Some things aren't right here. Some things should not happen. And we had a lot of holes. We have a lot of holes. And I know the holes you're talking about. And I'm not smart. I just ran into a few of them. You find yourself in court. All of a sudden, everything that you thought should have gone this way, should have gone that way, went out the window when you're sitting there saying, are you kidding me? Your ounces of precaution, and they're not ounces, are very well thought out. I'm with you. I'm with you. We're getting into a very litigious life here. We got a country that's running in different directions and kind of making arguments and enemies and defining different people in different ways, and it's all just really very upsetting. So I just want to say, what can I do? I think that my road should be able to accept a fire truck, and I'm for that. I'd even like it to be able to turn around and get out if it needs to, which is questionable, you know. I'd like my road to be 16 feet wide. I think that was great. Coming up here, I'm saying to my wife, you know, maybe I could give 2 feet off of my road and he could give 2 feet, I mean, off of my lot and 2 feet over here. 4 feet, and 4 feet's a big thing right here, you know. That would be really great, you know. Could we just allow the town to take that 2 feet, or do we have to draw it all out and have it surveyed and have it, you know, recorded, or could we just allow that to happen? I don't really know. I don't really know. I'd like the road to be paved. I'm sorry, but there's been a couple of times I've come down that road when we bought the road, when we bought the house. Boy, we had a rainstorm that I could, the divots right in the road were like 2-3 feet deep. It was scary to go down the road. And you came and you fixed it. You were fixing it with a sand that washed away pretty easily, and I called up. Honestly, I called up and they changed it. They changed it. They fixed it. It's pretty good now, you know. But I'd like it paved, and I'm willing to pay for it. I'm willing to pay for that. My house is based on how much I can sell it for, the taxes. I believe that. Whether I have a dirt road or a paved road or whatever I got, if I can sell my house for $500,000. That's what I'm taxed on. I think. If you can sell yours for $600,000, that's what you get. And if you're in the middle of town and you can sell yours for $600,000 or $700,000 with a paved road, that's what I think we're taxed on. We're taxed on what we can sell our house for. You know, there's no special stuff. I do sit here and say, oh my God, it's a tax bill. You've got to be kidding me. But there's none of my kids are in your school. Like, couldn't afford to buy anything when they were in school, like this. This is where my wife and I are going to retire. We've been here 14 years. We've been renting it so that we can afford it, so that when we in fact retire, we can maybe actually live up here. But, I just want to say thank you for pointing out the holes. Those, when you run into them, and you've run into a couple with that cul-de-sac running away, and I could see issues where that could go. You're right. You got to tighten this stuff up, and you're going to be tightening it up even after you tightened it up. But that's the right thing. I'm wondering, is it possible that we could get a bond on my road, that the town could work with us to get a bond and get the thing paved, and I'll pay some extra money, even on my taxes, to work with the town to get that so it's 16 feet wide, and we got hot top and we're safe. Because I'll tell you, my house is going to sell for more. This is not a bad investment. I mean, if people can't afford it, which I don't know, I'm not sure that we can, but if people can't afford it, those are significant issues. But safety and really not having to continually work on these roads all the time, and for the poor guy to get the truck down without, you know, breaking a mirror or something like that is really important. That stuff, roads, if we could pave them, that would be great. If we can't, then maybe it's a long-term thing. But I'm sorry. A bond maybe, and collect it through taxes. Before I forget, we want to stay a town. Do not break things up into little communities and little, don't confuse it. Work through your town, bring your town together, make sure that we do what we can do to keep that going. This meeting is trying to tell us that we have, I've said this, that we have legal issues with loose language. And from what I've heard, we do. And it would be really good if we can tighten that stuff up, and we'll feel a lot more secure. And I don't believe you'll recognize how lucky you were that you did that, because of all the legal things that will not befall you, because it's happening everywhere. It hasn't happened up here as much, but down where I am in Massachusetts, my God, you can't make any decisions without consulting with attorneys as to whether you can do this. I got to build a building, 2 houses right next to my house, and there's all kinds of interactions and legal issues, and the town is, let them tighten it up and bear with them.
Good evening, and I just first want to say thank you for listening to all of us and taking everything into consideration. My name is Barbara Heyer, and my husband and I live 27 Moores Road. We've lived there for 10 years. Well, we've owned the house for 10 years, but we've recently, within the past years, have lived there full time. And my mom lived with us. And just to say, you know, as my mom used to say, I'll keep this short and sweet like a jackass's gallop. I was very concerned when my mom was living with us. She was 97 at the time, and if anything should have happened to her during the winter, I don't feel as though she would have gotten the appropriate emergency care. It was about 5 years ago that we had just moved in permanently, and there was a snowstorm at Thanksgiving. Our road was horrible, and we had the unfortunate occurrence of watching our neighbor's house burn down to the ground. It took 45 minutes for the fire department to get there, and then they didn't have enough water. They had to try to pump it out of the lake. This was Thanksgiving, but it was snowing. That fire was horrendous, and there was nothing we could do. We had to wait and wait and wait. There's a number of retired people on the road. My husband is one of them, just came out of retirement, but that's a good thing. And it's unfortunate that I feel like sometimes I can't get to work because the roads are not sanded. Moore's is a slow decline down towards the lake, And there are times when I feel like I can't even get up past our house. So I am kind of reiterating what some people have already said. It's humanity that we really have to think about. It's the human factor in all of this, safety, and just being able to feel secure in your own home and knowing that you'll have some backup if something should happen in an emergency situation. I just wanted to emphasize that. Thank you.
All right, I'm Bill Forrest. I'm recent. I'm really a rookie. We purchased a home with some college friends, another family, on 56 Bardary Lane a year ago. I did so with the supposition that the road was maintained by the town. I also worked 20 years ago at Seabrook Power Station. I lived over on Cove Road, which was also a town-maintained road. I in no way thought that this road would just be taken away and the town would no longer maintain it. What I heard tonight, I didn't particularly like in a few spots. And I know you've seen it, Bardary Lane put out a document, and on there in the last page, attachment 2, is simply the RSA law. It's very simple. And I just want to point out a few things. Under paragraph 2, it defines what public benefit is, and it says there will be a town meeting, which was done in 2011, and quote unquote, that the public need for keeping such lane passable by emergency vehicles is supported by identified public welfare. And then I heard of at least one individual say that maybe a substation. That is clearly not what is meant here, okay? So I think there's some misinformation there. And then secondly to that, on the last paragraph, paragraph 4, it gives a perfect out for the town. And the town is, this section shall not be construed to create any due or liability on the part of any municipality toward any person or property. That is your out. So if the supposition here is that we're worried from a legal perspective, I'm not buying it. And what I saw on December 3rd was a board that was supposed to be talking about a culvert repair, which was actually probably $3,000. But speaking off note, one of the selectmen said, well, it's major, it's $6,000 or $10,000. This was not a major repair. This was probably a $3,000 repair. We spend $340,000 we give the town. We're looking for 0.8% back to do a minor repair. So I took issue with that, and I'll just tell you my perspective. I'm a nuclear engineer, and I can complicate things to no end with my colleagues. But this board has complicated things beyond what I have ever seen, okay? So I'm a good litmus test, and I'll tell you, and I'll give you one last thing. I've been lucky enough to own homes since I was very young. Even though some of these people think I'm young, I've been around a little bit. And this board is, in my mind, very aggressive and willing to change things that change the fabric of the town very quickly and quietly. And I don't appreciate that, okay? I want to give you how maybe it's done in other towns. So if you follow the Connecticut River all the way down to Old Saybrook, where our primary home is, right on the coast, beautiful town, 10,000 people. There was an issue where they were seasonal residents and there were legal issues. I want to go to Four Season. I don't have all my ducks in a row. But then the town says, look, we need them to get public sewers. So the town across the board said, look, we're going to do this right. We're going to grandfather people in, and we're going to let them take these steps to get Four Season, and they made it easy. Next town over made it look hard. So my point is this. In 2011, it was settled. It was very clear and very easy to find 30 designated emergency lanes. That should not be construed to be 16 feet and this and that and the other thing. These people have expected that service from this town. They paid tens and tens of millions of dollars to the town. I believe that service should be maintained. If you have perfect other avenues to take on new emergency lanes or not. And that's been discussed here tonight very well. So I think it's a settled matter. If you have some people that want to upgrade their road, let them upgrade it. But I wouldn't start trying to reinvent the wheel here and taking emergency lane designation off of some roads, especially where this was just brought up off the cuff at a December 3rd meeting. And really, what really drove it was a road repair in Raymond, which is ridiculous that you would then relate that to this minor repair on Fart Area Lane.
Hi, my name's John Fernald, not the road agent, but that is my uncle. I'm all set. I actually worked for my uncle from about 1998 till his retirement in 2017. I plowed a lot of snow. I plowed every single road in town. All of the emergency lanes. My main route was on my primary route for most of the time was on the 156 side of Pawtucket Lake. So I know these roads well. I know the challenges that they have and the number of people that they serve. Having said that, I also know that there are certain town roads that don't meet 16-foot widths and have other challenges. Stevens Hill has its areas, Case Road has its areas. But it seems to me, since the town has both plowed and maintained these roads for multiple generations, over 40 years, under multiple road agents, and the select board multiple times has approved these as ELs or emergency lanes, precedence has been set. We talk about whether or not these meet criteria and everything. You guys have been maintaining these for forever. As far as I'm concerned, we need to maintain status quo. This isn't a matter, I personally don't believe this is a matter of whether or not the town is going to continue to do this or not. It's going to be whether or not we resolve this peacefully and continue to do as we've been for so long, or if we're going to go down these one by one and make these town roads, much like we did with Lakeview, which again, in my opinion, was probably about one of the worst town roads that roads that we have, and that was a town road, which last year we just got done paving that entire section at, I don't have the numbers, but I'm sure a great expense. So thank you for your time.
My name is Arthur Mello. I live at 21 Swan Drive, which is on Nottingham Lake. And I've lived there for 20 years. I built a house there. When I went to build a house there, I talked to the building inspector at the time, and he gave me the impression that that was the town road. It is a paved road. It was paved when I bought the land 2 years prior to that, and it's been plowed and maintained somewhat since then. And I find it hard to believe that what's going to happen if that's not going to be a service road or a town road anymore. The pavement's all breaking up, and it won't be long before it needs a grader to take it out of there. But it was paved. It's been paved for 20 years, and I think it should stay that way. That's about all I can say. Thank you.
Dave Fernald. I'm the one with the farm. I'm not the road agent. John Tanico referred to the amount of taxes that were paid by the towns, by the lake people. That was the case well over 60 years ago. They were plowing town roads 60 years ago. They did what was right then. We should do what's right now. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jamie Burley. I live at 85 Raymond Road. I do have an invested interest in the roads being maintained. I have family on Lamprey Drive. But I also have another contact here. I'm a small business owner, and a lot of this town has small businesses. And we don't work out of a shop. We actually go to people's homes. These are my customers. I see them around. If these roads don't get plowed, I don't have access to my customers, and that costs me money. So, I mean, that's something to look at too when you guys are weighing on, you know, is it good for the community? I think so. You guys aren't a lot, you know, not you guys, but the town doesn't want large businesses to come in. So we're relying on small businesses. Well, if a small business can't reach their customers, we can't stay in business. That was my only thing.
I think there's one person back there who is.
Hi, Jenny Gibson, 13 Swan Drive. I've only been here 4 years, so not that long. However, I came in, I would say, within the first year of being here to ask about a hole on Swan Drive. Because I walk my dog. Most of us have dogs. We don't have kids in the neighborhood. But there's a large hole that a number of us stepped in the middle of the night. You guys at some point came by and did fix it eventually, I think a year later. But when I went in to ask about the road, who owned it, no one was able to tell me who owned it. They said, it should be the people on both sides of the road, split down the middle. And if you do go through with this, we do need to know who owns those roads, because private roads, technically, they could put tolls up, they could put concrete barriers up. It is their road to do with what they like, if it is a private road. If they decide to go gravel, you would lose taxes, as well as you asked the gentleman who does the housing. He would be able to give you the numbers on what the prices on the properties would be if they're going to be private roads and not town roads. So you're going to lose a lot of money, I do believe. If these are lake houses, these are private roads, you get quite a bit of money from us. My biggest issue is that I've not been able to be told who owns the roads.
What does your deed say?
The deed says I live on West Shore Drive. It doesn't even say I live on Swan. And it has different pages. So I have, yes, it's not exactly clear. I'm on Swan, but other people have said that Swan Drive may also be a different road, because the lane may just be the part of Swan Drive that isn't even Swan Drive. It just goes down from Fort Hill. Fort Hill may actually be the road that goes all the way around. So to say it's an emergency lane and then not be able to tell us where that lane is, that's another thing. I think before anything, you do have to have all your ducks in a row. You do need to know who owns these properties. Are they town? Are they not town? That's my biggest issue here is ownership of them, who owns them. And yes, I do believe the town should be still plowing them and such, because liability is, I think, far worse if people are not unable to get the services we pay for, because we also pay for. Yes, we pay for the town services we feel that we pay for, the plowing we feel that we pay for, keeping our roads serviced. We pay for the fire and the police and all that jazz. And yet, if they can't get to us, how useful are our taxes for that? Thank you.
Hi, my name's Fred Howe. I live on Shore Drive. The fellow who has Trash Busters made a good point. He was talking about how hard it is on the equipment. I've been looking at Shore Drive, and I'd like to ask you, for the last few months, because it's really deteriorated. I can't speak for everybody else's roads. I just don't know what condition there is, so I'm just speaking about my own. But the man, the Trash Buster, made a point that I've been thinking about, and I would like to urge you all to please drive up there this week, up Siemens Point Road and go up Shore Drive a little way. It's gonna be hell on the snow plow this year, some of those rocks that are sticking up. And I've also been really concerned, there was a huge hole there on Siemens Road that I was really thinking could possibly do some serious damage to a fire truck. And you know, you think about the worst catastrophe that could happen. If you had a fire truck that broke down right there and there's a fire farther up the road, I just hate to think, you know, especially in those winds that we had recently. So anyway, you guys are doing a great job. I've been impressed by, you know, many of you here. So thank you very much. And please take that drive up there.
Hi, my name is Don Morell. I live on 21 Barderi Lane. I just want to give you a couple examples on why our roads need to be maintained. Back in '94, my mother had a heart attack, and the ambulance tried to get down our road. Could not do it. So the police chief called the town, and they rushed right down there real quick with 2 plow trucks, a sander, and everything to get that, clear that road real quick, because they were worried about getting sued or my mother dying from that heart attack. All right? That's one example. And ever since then, our road's been plowed. And I'm not saying that they're doing a bad job. They're doing a great job. John Fernal, he maintained our road excellent. I mean, I have no complaints. Now, here's another example on what's happening now, all right? My father is totally independent, okay? I have to take care of him 24/7. He lives at the end of one of the roads where they had to come in down and plow. He has to have V&A services come in and take care of him. Now, if our roads cannot be passable, these V&A people aren't going to have 4-wheel drives. They're going to have cars just like everybody else to come down the road. If they can't come down our road, they're not going to be able to service my father. And I'm not just talking about occupational therapy people or physical therapy people. I'm talking about the V&A nurses that have to give them shots, medications, and all that stuff. Now, that's life-threatening if they can't be maintained. Now, at the end of our road, I'm on Barderi Lane, and you probably know all about it. You come down our road, and the first thing you do is go down a big hill. Only the last couple years, you've been able to get up that hill in the wintertime. I didn't have a 4-wheel drive, so what I would do is at the fork of the road where the mailboxes are, I'd look as far as I can, and then I'd gun it. And I'd get to that hill, and I'd shoot up that hill and look through the trees to see if there was any cars coming. There's no cars coming. Wow, I'm on 156. I made it. If there was a car coming, you'd stop, back up down the hill, try again. That's how we got out of the road. But like I said, the last couple years, they did a fantastic job. They've been sanding the road, and you don't have to take that running start anymore and worry that you're going to either shoot over the road, 156, or have to stop and back down again. I just got to say, you know, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Shelley, you said out of one of the statements it says that the town cannot put any money to a road that does not benefit the public. We have numerous amounts of people that are coming down our road looking for the lake. It's listed on Google as access for the lake. All right? Plus, if you're going to say that, then every dead-end road in this town or horseshoe road in this town does not benefit the public. It only benefits the people that live on that road.
Those are town.
All right? How does that benefit the public? But yet the town maintains their road because it's a town road. But it's not benefiting me unless I want to go look at somebody's house. And that's all I got to say. I just wish this town would just stop their bickering and get together with everybody and live in harmony, for crying out loud. It's a small town. That's why I moved here. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa Carey, Seaman Point Road, and again, thank you all for listening to us. My husband's family's been on the lake since the 1930s, and my family's been on the lake since the 1950s. We moved here because we met, love on the lake, and moved here from Massachusetts 15 years ago. And honestly, you know, it's been bubbling up and down about maintenance of the roads, but I really haven't had any complaints. You know, the road maintenance has been good. Lately, not so good. Actually, it feels like the maintenance already stopped on Seaman Point Road, as was just explained. I do feel, I am concerned about plows and people coming through there because there are such big divots just in the beginning by the mailboxes right from the road that I'm not sure, you know, how as the winter goes on, how we're going to maintain through there. But what I wanted to ask, with the loss of John, as our road maintenance person or the manager, road manager, what do we have in his place? What are the plans? And that seems where there's a deficit. And you know, and that's what I want to ask the board. What do we, I know we're going to go through the policy, but do we have a body or a person that's taking on that role?
Yeah, so yeah, we're very unfortunate to lose Johnny, and I think a lot of us got spoiled by the fact that John was willing to work Sundays and Saturdays, and he would be out there early morning and late night. And so, while that was something that was, you know, really appreciated, it also spoiled us. So when John retired, we said we were going to look for a person who could fill like a public works position. So they would be responsible for the highway department and the recycling center, and the cemetery is true. And you know, that would give us somebody who can help get to the next level in terms of, you know, all of those operations. Problem is that they aren't out there. They aren't out there. Unemployment is so low that everybody has a job, or a lot of people have a job, right? And there are towns, like 8 or 9 towns right around us, that are trying to fill the same position. And so we haven't had luck with that. We've posted the job 2 different ways. One is Public Works and one is Highway Department lead, but we still have the same challenge. And so in the interim, Chris has been doing double duty as, you know, managing the guys over in the crew as well. But I have to say, they do an excellent job, and they're managing quite well, you know, given the situation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and so I think if there's an open position, and there's anybody here who is interested, I mean, we have a lot of people who have vested interest. I mean, it's something to really think about, to work together to help the town as well. So thank you.
You should mention that we promoted somebody to foreman that's running the day-to-day stuff too. You know.
Oh yeah, let me just clarify one point on that too. We do have a town employee who we promoted to foreman, and so he's actually been with us for a long time, very experienced, and he's running the day-to-day operations.
Matt Pitkin, 28 Deerfield Road. I grew up in this town. I worked for John Fernald part-time for a long time. You're trying to expand the job he did. John Fernald did 2 people's job. You can't replace him with 1 man. That job hasn't been reposted since April or March. So I'm sorry. I know you're looking, but you're not looking hard enough, or you're not looking for the right person. That's all I got to say about that.
Okay, going once, going twice. All right, well, thank you very much for coming out. Appreciate everybody coming here. Also, thank you to everybody on the board has listened and heard, and this, as I said at the beginning, will be a continued discussion. If you pay attention to the future agendas, you'll see when this topic is coming up again, and those are available on the town website.
Adjourn your meeting.
Adjourn the meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?